Welcome to the Perfect Storm. We have a very different show today. We have an empty studio, but a bearded fella in the background. Welcome, Blake.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on Faith FM. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and for those who might remember you from when you were previously on Faith FM.
Faith FM, yeah. Yeah, well, I was on Faith FM. I did the breakfast show for quite a while there, a few years back. Lots changed. I went back to university. I got a degree in counseling, and now I have a company where I do counseling, coaching, and mentoring for lots of different people. But one of the big groups that I help are pastors, chaplains, and ministry leaders in Australia and New Zealand. I've got some clients in America and Finland as well too. So kind of all
Finland.
over the place. Yeah,
Wow.
you know that place.
That place.
So I do everything online like this, and I provide mentoring, coaching, support, and counseling for ministry leaders.
Now, most people will recognize you have an accent as well.
Yep.
You're from the Congo, is that right?
No, I'm not from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is not that democratic and not very republic. I was born in California, but I have an Oregon driver's license. So I'm a big Oregon football fan, Oregon Ducks fan. And yeah, I born in Northern California a while ago, quite a few years ago now. And I came over here almost 18 years ago, 17 years ago this year.
Okay, I'm loving having you on the Perfect Storm because you bring an interesting American perspective. Mostly it's just Queenslanders on this show talking about our opinions, but good to get an American opinion on here. Maybe explain where in the States you are from, what sort of just very, very briefly, what sort of an upbringing you had, just so they can understand your slant.
Yeah. I had a very eclectic upbringing. I have my mother's side of the family were bank robbers, and they ran brothels and went to prison and did all sorts of crazy stuff. And then my father's side was no less crazy. They grew marijuana and made moonshine and sold that, and they were what I guess you would call bogans. We would call them rednecks. And so both sides of the family spent a lot of time in jail and prison. So I guess they weren't that successful in their pursuits.
Well, maybe that was the goal.
Yeah. And then apparently my grandma just told me recently I'm technically a fifth generation Adventist. I did not know that. And many of those generations were in prison, but apparently they were at least some sort of Adventist connection from my great grandmother who saw Ellen White at a lakeside, or not lakeside, that's here in Australia, on the side of a lake.
Gotcha.
And went to an old camp meeting and saw her back in, I believe, the 1800s. And so when she was living, I think in Elms Haven, is that what it's called? I think that's where it's called. Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's about as Christian as, or I'm about as Adventist as maybe Trump is Christian. So like, in reality, heritagely, I'm not Adventist, but I have made the decision in my adult life to become a baptized Seventh-day Adventist and to do everything in my power to humbly follow Jesus, though I have made a lot of mistakes and I have made some bad decisions along that journey. I am still
a sinner,
doing my best. I'm still doing my best to make the decision to put Jesus as a priority of my life.
Amen.
And he has given me the great responsibility and opportunity to help other pastors and ministers. So I have about 15 years of experience in ministry. I did 8 years as a kind of volunteer evangelist, kind of Bible worker situation, did a lot of mission work in Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea. with you, both of those, and some stuff in Fiji as well too, and even China. And then I worked full time as a senior pastor where I planted a church, and I was a senior pastor, church planter for about 7 years as well too. So total 15 years, but 7 where they paid me.
So that's like 50% discount for 15 years. That's
They
good.
definitely got a big discount for sure.
Good rates. Good rates. All right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for filling in for Justin, who is driving somewhere out west, and Phil, who is also driving somewhere down south. So
I love how you guys talk about that. It's just like, oh, somewhere out west, somewhere down south. You know, it's such a big place, New South Wales. And I watched this video with my daughter. I have a 13-year-old who's almost 14, and this lady was just absolutely ripping on Australia, and she's like, "You don't even know how big Texas is. We're bigger than anything that you got down in Australia."
Yeah.
And as we're watching it, we're just like, poor lady. Like Texas would fit inside of New South Wales. Like, but she was like, it's bigger than the whole thing's bigger than Texas, is bigger than the whole country of Australia. You don't know anything. And it's just like, unfortunately, that's not correct.
Yeah. They'll catch
but
up.
and I love Australia. So on the Instagram, I'm the Outback Patriot as well too. And I love this country, man. I've been here for almost 18 years, and I genuinely think, and I will say this to anyone, it's the best country in the world to live and to raise kids. There's nowhere safer in the whole world, and there's nowhere that I would rather live than this country. Maybe if I was a billionaire, I would live in New Zealand, but they're kind of connected anyway, so it's all.
So basically, the
Okay.
East
I
Island.
love this area. Yeah. Well, I think Tasmania is that island, and then this is like the really, really east. But then there's Easter Island, which is even farther out as well too.
Good. You know more geography than most Australians. That's good. Let's go through the news, and
Cool.
let's get some of your uniquely American perspectives here. And
Oh, okay. I'm a little nervous. Well, I wouldn't say I have that of American perspective. I have a unique American Australian perspective because I'm both. I really am both. I'm a citizen of Australia now, and I've been here for most of my adult life.
yeah, glad to have you on the team.
Thank you.
So we've got here. We've split screen, and we're now looking at the news. In the middle, we've got SpaceX Dragon undocking from the International Space Station. Of course, the astronauts who were stuck up there for 9 months.
Looks like we're getting our next crew member.
Literally being slid out of the capsule here. And yeah. Have you ever been to space, and would you like to be stuck up there for 9 months?
You know, I have not been to space. I've flown all over the world. I have a rule, not a rule, but it's kind of like a little, maybe a tenant, I guess you would say, where I try to go to one new country for every year that I'm alive. I'm currently 37, but I've only been to 36 countries, so I'm one behind on that. But I am going to another country, but I'll be 38 by the time I do that, so I'll still be one behind. So I got to keep on going here. But so I have been up in the air a lot, and I have traveled around the world a lot, but I've never been to space. That's a little outside of my budget, and I'm a little, I'm really into space, actually. I love space exploration, and I was just watching a documentary on Voyager 2, one of the telescopes that we sent out to the edge of the solar system, because I'm a nerd like that, and I love that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, haven't been to space myself. Would love to have the chance to do that someday if you know anybody. Kyle, I don't know.
I don't, but soon I will. They seem extremely happy, and I was actually looking for the comments from one of these astronauts came back, and he's basically quoting Bible verses and praising God and just like proclamation of his Christian faith as the thing that got him through the extra 9 months that they had to spend up there. But of course, it was because of SpaceX that they were able to be rescued. So it sounds like Elon helped out in a significant way. And in fact, Trump said to Elon, you need to go and get those guys. Like, can you please be in charge of rescuing them? And even under the Biden administration, it was agreed that SpaceX would be the ones to go and get them.
Yeah.
So tell me, Blake, in your opinion, has SpaceX added value to space exploration, or has it detracted from technology advancing in space?
Well, I think of course they've added value. There's no question. So short answer is yes. I do think I saw some graph or something that basically in the last few years, SpaceX is responsible for like 90+% of all space activity.
Yep.
So, and that's every country, right? So that's like, I think China's got like 5% going on or something like that. But I mean, SpaceX is without a doubt the most influential, space navigator of at least this decade, maybe the century. I don't know.
And it's cheaper for NASA to actually just get SpaceX to reuse a rocket than for them to blow one up. And
that's a whole thought process in it of itself, is just recognizing in the world that we live in, privatization of certain things is actually cheaper than, governments being in control of stuff. Ironically, that's very interesting to me. And I do find it interesting that the guy who's in charge of making space exploration and navigation more efficient to the point that NASA's just, we'll just pay you to do it. He's now also kind of on the bandwagon of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and I got mixed feelings about that. I really do. Because my mom works as a social worker in America, and so now she has to send an email to Elon Musk every week, letting him know this week I have done these items. So
your mom works for the government and is now accountable to DOGE as well.
Yeah, so she's a social worker. She worked in the prison system for many years, and I asked her why she did that, and she said, "Well, half of our family was there, so I just felt it was good to help out the family." And I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then she graduated, I guess you could say, and now works for we call it the VA, or Veterans Affairs or Veterans Association, and her job now is to help to find housing and accommodation for veterans who have either retired or they have come back from, military work, right? Yep. And so, unfortunately, in America, there's a big fentanyl issue. There's a lot of drug use, and there's a lot of PTSD associated with that. And then a lot of these veterans find themselves, really struggling because of their, the work that they've done has caused a lot of mental trauma and damage. So she provides counseling and also provides the process to help them find a house so they're not living on the streets. Yep. We don't have that in Australia, but like in America, there are entire cities made out of tents where people just live in tent cities. It's pretty wild.
Which is a fairly recent development that it's got this bad.
Yeah, and I've seen it firsthand, so it's not just like a made up thing. I've driven through these tent cities in the Sacramento area, Los Angeles area. I've seen them for myself. It's thousands of people living just in tents. For two reasons. There's lots of reasons, I suppose, but I think one big reason is substance abuse. Like that's a huge, like to deny that is false. Like substance abuse leads to accommodation issues at some point because of finances. But I think the other big reason in America, Australia is I wouldn't say communist, but it's definitely more socialist, right? Whereas America is very capitalist. And I think there are strengths and weaknesses to both. I think in capitalism, it's a great thing for those who have the capacity to, get more, like Elon Musk, I guess. Like there's way more opportunity for capital growth in a country like America, but there's also way more opportunity for failure, right? So risk begets reward, and reward begets risk, right? So in Australia, what I find is like the average bloke, like, just g'day mate, how you going, general guy, right? They have a better opportunity to have a better life in general. Like the plumber is almost paid as much as the doctor here, right? Sometimes more. Everyone talked about the plumber, being the court jester until he's the king when the toilet is broken, So I find it really interesting. In Australia, the average bloke can have a better life, and that's why I think it's such a great country here.
We went from
And blokes and women as well too.
we went from rockets to fentanyl and drug abuse. That was good.
Well, yeah, true, we did. But I do find it interesting that Elon is now directly, however you say his name, Musk is directly writing emails to my mom, and basically, I think he issued a letter. I read this letter. Doge issued a letter that basically said, "Hey, we're going to give you an opportunity to quit right now. We're going to pay you for 8 months, and you can just sign this, walk out the door, and we'll pay you for the next 8 months." A lot of people took it, a lot of people didn't. But one of the issues was there was no precedent that had been set before. And so everyone was afraid, like, okay, if I quit, am I going to get paid or not? And so my mom made the decision to keep working, but now she has her weekly check-ins. What have I done this week? And so in our conversation, she's often sharing with me her task that she has completed for the week. She's like, this is what I'm doing.
Is she hating the accountability? Does she see any value to it, or?
No, I think for her, she's like a workaholic. Sorry, I love you, Mom, but it's the truth. Like, she has 2 jobs, so she does that, and then has a private practice for counseling as well, on top, with 20 clients that she sees every week. So she's pretty insanely busy. So for her, it's actually
she's going to get promoted. When they see how much work,
like when they see what she's doing, they're like, "Oh, okay." And actually, it's funny you say that. Like, I literally think they have talked about putting her in a supervisor position, but she doesn't want that because she has the other job.
Tell me, does your mum like the accountability that Doge brings, considering she's being directly somewhat impacted by it, and her workplace is being impacted by it?
She calls him Muskrat, so I'm not sure how much she likes him or not. The accountability is not the issue, but I think the instability of, she had this plan, she's going to work this long, she's going to retire at a certain point, and now with, Muskrat's presence, that whole plan is really, it's not threatened, it's just unstable. And my mom, and I think a lot of people, and I have found a lot of even women in my life, they love stability. So stability is a really important thing. Some people would refer to it as a nesting as well too. Like, they want to make sure that all their needs are met. And so I think when uncertainty comes in, there is an element of instability, and that part she doesn't like. I don't think she cares about the accountability, because she's like, look, you want to pay me to write an email about what I did all week? All right. Like, doesn't mean anything to her.
So could you summarize that in saying that people who work hard have nothing to fear, except for the fact that there's instability around every government department because everything's under review?
Yeah. I would just add one caveat. It's kind of an unspoken rule, but like, anyone who is a social worker in the government is basically what they would call an untouchable. Like, they won't say that, but like, social workers can basically be put in almost any role. They're very versatile for the government. So it's like, we'll put them there, we'll have them do this, we'll have them do this, we'll have them do that. And so if you're a social worker working for the US government, not only is your job stable, they might, draft you into the army of workers, whether you like it or not, So it's, it's definitely stable for hard workers, and it's definitely stable for social workers. Now, if you are part of the DEI and you are helping to do underwater basket weaving for indigenous groups, like, that could be a problem, and not to say that that's wrong. If you want to do that for indigenous groups, underwater basket weaving, no problem. But my point is, the government has definitely changed their stance on what they deem necessary and responsible.
Yeah. And do you think that they have reason to do such? Has there been anything that might have caused there to be a review? Can you think of any?
I'm actually struggling to not think of anything.
Okay.
Like, I'm on the other end of that.
Okay.
So it totally makes sense why after years and years of bureaucracy, I don't know if you've ever read it. There's a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And the thing that's really interesting, which is interesting, that's a book that Elon Musk basically says is his number one book that he's read. And it is very anti-bureaucracy. And it talks about this guy who's just, I think Earth is destroyed and he is sent all over the galaxy. It's not true, it's fiction. But now that I'm thinking about it, it does remind me of Musk more and more. I'm like, oh, this is where he's getting all this stuff from. Because it's quite atheistic.
Right.
And it's quite space travel-y, and it's definitely anti-bureaucracy. So I'm just like, is this a book about Elon Musk? Is this like a biography? I don't know. But I do think that book has strongly influenced Musk's desire to create efficiencies in everything that he does. He's quite an efficient guy. Probably has, German heritage, if I'm not mistaken. And they're quite efficient as a nation, historically speaking.
Yeah. So
for better or worse sometimes.
I'll just go back to split screen here. Elon Musk's vision for humanity is to become a multi-planetary species. So heaven is not a planet that he is looking forward to.
First, I just want to challenge that. First off, I don't even consider us a species. We are children created in the image of God. And whenever we put the word species, it's like it references evolution. I'm strongly against evolution. Strongly.
We're another kind of animal, another species.
No, we're not animals. We are children of the living God.
So he wants a multi-planetary species by establishing a self-sustaining colony on Mars, aiming to ensure long-term survival of the human race if Earth becomes uninhabitable. Tell me, is this, despite it being an atheistic, evolutionary sort of mindset, is this positive or negative for humanity?
Well, I'm looking forward to the uninhabitable time of Earth. Because it means that my Lord and Savior Jesus is coming back, and we get to live for 1,000 years in heaven and then come back to a new Earth that will be inhabitable for eternity. So if we get to a time that Earth is uninhabitable, it means by God's grace alone, I will be spending time in heaven with my best buddy, Jesus. So, I would definitely say it's quite an atheistic view.
Okay. And then his motivation, Musk believes that humanity needs a backup in case of existential threats on Earth, whether natural or man-made. He sees Mars as the most viable option for creating self-sustainable off-world civilization because, again, doesn't believe that God will take us to another space.
Yeah.
His company, SpaceX, is focused on developing the technology and infrastructure necessary for achieving this goal, including the Starship rocket designed for reusable mass production and super heavy lift launches. These big super heavy, is it the Falcon 9 or is that the small one? Anyways, he's got the super heavies that can carry like a bonkers amount of cargo that they would need in order to establish civilization on Mars.
It's a very specific, a bonkers amount. That's a lot. Yeah.
It's an Australian metric term. Musk has previously stated that he envisions 1 million people living on Mars by the 2040s. So his drive to do all of this does not just reside within the SpaceX company. Everything else is actually part of this plan, if you didn't know. Just filling you in because we're going to get to some more interesting stories.
Well,
but
I want to tell you, this is a direct connection to Australia. Mars is the first centuries or the new millennium's Australia. They're going to send 1 million people. They're going to send all the convicts to Mars.
Okay. It's just I get you.
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah, like, I mean, at one point, Australia was like another planet to basically all of the UK, and then they were like, hey, you stole some bread. We're going to send you off, and you're going to have to go live in Australia as a punishment. Little did they know, it's great. It's way better. Sign me up. I've been to London like 10 times. Sign me up for living in Australia any day. A lot of poison, a lot of crazy animals going to get you. But, I love this place. Going surfing all the time. Yeah, it's just
So
a much better spot.
I've got up here basically the mission statement of Tesla, which is the other biggest company of Elon Musk's. In pursuit of our mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, that's the mission of Tesla, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, we build products that are designed to replace some of the planet's biggest polluters. Every product we sell helps the owner lower emissions. In 2023, our customers avoided releasing 20 million metric tons of CO2 into our atmosphere. Is this, whether or not you agree with
I don't know how accurate all that is, and I'll tell you why. Solar energy is not without its impact on the environment. Regardless of the whole climate change debate, I don't really want to get into that because I don't think a useful debate on so many things. But solar is not purely clean right now.
Sure.
Like, it takes a lot to create,
and the
products that create energy.
For example, on that point, I know that you can't see my screen, so I'm just going to tell you what we're seeing. Minimizing our environmental footprint. Electric vehicles and sustainable energy products have a far better environmental impact than fossil fuel alternatives. This includes full life cycle from raw material mining to product use and disposal.
Yeah.
The mining equation, we're dedicated to sourcing our raw materials responsibly. Furthermore, a shift to a sustainable energy economy will require less mining than fossil fuels. So he believes we'll actually get to a point where they'll basically get all of the raw materials they need, and then we'll be able to stop mining altogether. And
from Greenland.
And the equation, well, I don't know where from.
From Greenland, baby.
The equation will balance out. So, we're pulling stuff out of the ground now, but we won't have to pull it out forever because he's actually investing also in the recycling of these materials and how to repurpose, and then how to use less rare earth materials and just actually function on carbon, basically, carbon-based batteries. So they're certainly not oblivious to these perceptions on how unhealthy it is to create solar panels.
Look, even though it's unhealthy, I would say overall, if you're going to do it from an environmental impact perspective, it definitely is a cleaner form of energy. Like, it's hard to argue that, but it's not without its, without its drawbacks for sure. But I think I actually like the idea of having electric vehicles, and if you look back on the history of that, if we get into any conspiracy theory stuff,
we'd never go near those.
Well, it's very well, I think it's clear, but I don't know what other people think, but the big, not big pharma, but big fuel, they've had a huge impact on the stalling of alternative energy vehicles. Really? I knew a guy. Just the whole buying up of the patents and the prevention of technological growth because they strongly benefit from developing vehicles that use more fuel. V8 power engine, that's a moneymaker for them, right? Yep. So it makes very little sense from a purely fuel company to not get people to use as much fuel as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's an entire documentary for anybody who wants to do their research at home on I think it was called the EV1, and it was a RAV4 with a battery.
Incredible.
And I think they sold a couple, then they realized, and they started leasing them out instead. And then at the end of the lease period, they took them all back, and then they had them crushed.
Yeah. It was a very interesting. It's like a graveyard.
I think it was called "Who Killed the Electric Car."
Yeah, it's a great documentary. Yeah, but look, I think the technology has actually been there for a long time. I think what Tesla has done has definitely improved it, and I think Elon Musk is currently, he was not long ago the richest man in the world. I don't know with the plummeting of the Tesla stock, whether he is or not, but regardless of that, he's a very wealthy individual who is less swayed by big corporations than other people. And
Why?
So he's made, because money, influence, power, they all kind of are tied all together, triangulated, and he has influence, he has power. I mean, the dude has a chainsaw with Sonny's on like the national stage, and and by his own admission, he's Asperger's as well too.
Yeah.
So he's on the autistic spectrum,
Mm.
and he's quite hilarious about, like, he's, he makes fun of himself about having
Yeah,
it, and
yeah,
it's very funny in some ways. But the dude does not care what you think.
No.
Let's be very clear. He doesn't
No.
care what anyone thinks.
That's not going to make
He is
him
going
stop.
to Mars,
Hmm.
and either the convicts are going or you're going to come willingly. But that's Mars is the new penal colony if it's not the resort.
Now he's obviously there's not just let me see list of Musk's achievements, space exploration. If you don't know about that, just look at the history of SpaceX, electric vehicles and energy, Tesla, the Powerwall, other ventures, Neuralink. So they're looking at a time soon when a chip in your brain will enable you to walk again. Say you're in a wheelchair now, you don't have to be. We put this chip in the brain, then we put another one at the piece below the piece of the spine that's severed, the spinal cord, and you can send signals back to your nerves.
I need one of those every morning.
Just in the morning.
I do not want to get out of bed sometimes. If I had that little link, I just lean over. Oh, legs are working. Yeah, let's go.
You still have to use your muscles, unfortunately.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, got it.
The Boring Company, which they're still working on. This is tunnels, underground tunnels for transportation. OpenAI, he co-founded that.
The ChatGPT, right?
X.com and PayPal, he was a co-founder. Zip2.
That's where he made all his money, is PayPal.
Well, he made some money and he reinvested it all in Tesla, basically.
Yeah, true.
Zip2, SolarCity, he acquired Twitter, and he's still working on another thing called Hyperloop. So
I don't know what that is.
I think it, and this might shock some people who swing suitcases into cars, which is the next story that I'm going to bring up. I would suggest that this man will actually go down in history as one of the most influential inventors, engineers, designers, creators.
Well, he's
far.
the modern Tesla.
Yeah.
Like, he is.
But even more than that, I think he's going to surpass.
He's the modern Edison,
I think he's going to surpass Edison.
Yeah, he maybe already has. I mean, just SpaceX alone.
Have you ever seen anybody land a rocket on a pair of tweezers in the air? Like, it's kind of mind-blowing. And here's what yes, he has a very big team of smart engineers with him. He's actually the lead sign-off engineer. Did you know this, Blake? He's the lead sign-off engineer for for SpaceX.
So he's the dude is a super smart dude, no doubt about it.
And he learned from reading books. He didn't go to college for his aeronautical astronomy type technologies at all. He actually just read it from books.
Well, I think there's a name for that, actually. It's like something file where you actually are a super genius from just what you read.
Gotcha.
I don't know the name of that exactly, but I know there is so clearly I'm not one of them.
So,
but
you or me.
But I do know that there is some sort of genius that comes from just reading.
Now, I mention all of that because of where we're going, and you are so good at talking that we're up to 33 minutes already.
Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. This is good. So what we have here on the screen now, man causes $3,000 worth of damage to a Tesla Model Y after smashing it with a suitcase. Airport parking lot in California. Although it's dark, we have a lot of detail here. His suitcase logo, his shirt, pretty clear visual.
What was the suitcase, actually? I was curious. Is it Samsonite?
You know,
they're really durable because I have a Samsonite and I've traveled all over the world with it. I'm very impressed with it.
It looks like a soft.
Out in Sweden.
Looks like a soft side carry-on. So
you're gonna go attack a car with a soft case? I mean,
he completely ruins the front left fender and smashes a window, I believe. So he did a good job. But what would it be that would drive somebody to act this way towards some random customer's Tesla? Like, this is not. I guess this is his way of attacking Elon. And this is not a one-off story, by the way. There's literally like a bunch of Teslas burning down in multiple places.
This is called MRS. No, MDS.
Yeah,
so
DS,
Musk derangement syndrome.
Okay,
You know, it's very similar to Trump, except it's less orange.
How does one obtain Musk derangement syndrome? What would it be that would drive that?
Look, I think a lot of times people hear a story, Like, let's say they're watching our show. Like, you shouldn't believe everything that I say. You shouldn't believe everything that Kyle says. You should go, especially that Kyle guy. No, you should go and read for yourself, right? Like Musk does. You should go and find out information for yourself. I have a thing that I love to do. I actually have some podcasts that are extremely left that I love listening to, and I have some podcasts that are extremely right that I like to listen to. And I try to find podcasts that are extreme perspectives on different topics that are happening. And then from both extremes, I try my best to figure out what makes the most logical sense for me, right? And my worldview as a follower of God, as someone who believes that Jesus is coming back, as someone who values what we would call Judeo-Christian, values and morals, and as someone who has had a lot of failures as well too. Like, right. I don't want to pretend that I'm some perfect person. I'm not even close. But there is a standard that Jesus has set for us that is so important and so good for us to try to uphold as a society, as a community, as a church, and as individuals, that if we were all doing that, if we were loving our neighbors as ourselves, if we were treating others the way that we would want to be treated, I think we would be doing a lot better overall in society. And I wouldn't want someone to come and take a suitcase and smash my car up with it. I actually have one of my cars is already taped up. If you hit a suitcase with it, it's going to fall apart. It's like I have this little car that I have a very sentimental value. I'm like, I'm just going to leave it taped up. It makes me happy.
Good. Nothing's changed with your cars over the years. Then we've got here Mark Rober, quite a famous YouTuber who decides that teaming up with the company's called, is it Luminaire or was it LiDAR or anyways, I can't remember what the company's called.
Something Luminex maybe? I don't know. Something like
anyways, it's this company that sells, can you guess what type of equipment?
Electric cars?
Well, LiDAR, actually. They're a LiDAR equipment company. Now, LiDAR is the kind of radar that Elon chooses not to use on any of his cars because he's going for visual-based AI full self-driving.
Okay.
Whereas your Waymos and your other vehicles like this, they're using LiDAR, lots of LiDAR and radar and other technology that is signal-based. They do have cameras as well, but their software is not AI driving. It's stop when the radar hits something, and don't make a decision based on what you see. Just make a decision based on all these other devices, and the technology is not AI learning based. So very different. And Mark Rober here
sounds like it'd be a good idea to have both.
Well, yeah, you'd think that too, but he thinks
maybe they're counterintuitive.
Musk thinks it's a crutch that we shouldn't rely on, and they're expensive sensors, and so it's cheaper just to teach the AI to drive with what it sees. So I've got the video here. What really needs to happen?
He drives through like a brick wall or a fake brick wall, and runs a kid over.
They take a
not
picture,
a real kid, but
they take a picture of the road in front. They create a barrier, a barrier with that picture on it. Then they tell you that they're putting the car in self-driving mode, and they let the car drive straight through the wall. And they're saying that Teslas, by association, self-driving cars are not good because you can deceive them and drive through brick walls, and you will kill yourself and whoever's behind the wall. Very strange and interesting video. There's a very famous YouTuber who now has a lot of backlash because this is very clearly a hit piece on Tesla. And it's in partnership with the LiDAR company.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that he took off the self-driving mode, and that he's filming with he said this is sponsored by Pixel, but he's filming with an iPhone. Like, just everything about the video is just a lie.
It's very strange.
So many levels.
It's very strange, and this is all coming out at the same time.
Smoke and daggers.
Tim Waltz, who was Harris's vice president nominee, said if you need a little boost during the day, check out Tesla stock.
Yeah, so they're happy that it's going down.
And Elon Musk replied and said, sometimes when I need a little boost, I look at the J.D. Vance portrait in the White House and I thank the Lord. So maybe he's not atheistic. Maybe he's now he's got prayer hands on this post.
It's very interesting when you talk about that. There is this real, I don't know if you know the word zeitgeist, but it's kind of like
I
the
do know.
things that are happening in the culture, the pop culture around us, right? And in the zeitgeist, I have seen a shift towards Christianity. I don't even know if it's real Christianity, but it's definitely towards Christian culture, right? So it is almost all throughout the government now. It is on a totally different level than it used to be. Now, in some ways, that's good. Here are some ways that they are not good. I don't know if you know about this or not, but in Ukraine right now, there's a war. Maybe you've heard about this.
We might have talked about it on this show.
Yeah. So, but one thing that they're not talking about is the religious persecution that's happening. So there's like a main church in Ukraine. Have you talked about this?
Not so much about this. Keep going.
Yeah. So there's a main church in Ukraine that they've basically become, it's illegal for them to worship freely anymore. And so it's like a law that has been written into place to prevent the worship of this congregation that at one point was like the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It was like the main church of Ukraine. Under Zelensky's rule, has completely changed, and these churches are now, and we're not talking a small denomination. This is like a very big popular denomination in Ukraine. They're now basically, it's illegal for them to have church, and the government, well, private companies that are backed by the government's power are now doing, what's that word? Smash and grab techniques of basically taking over the church's actual real estate facilities through strong arm tactics.
Yeah,
right?
I've just pulled it up on X. This is
It's crazy.
August last year. Zelensky regime has just adopted the law banning the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Yeah. And so now the persecution is like they're killing priests. They're literally kidnapping and killing priests.
I've got a video on right now doing where they're literally grabbing a priest.
It's crazy. And the thing is, like, no one's talking about that because it doesn't fit with the agenda of like, we've got to support Ukraine in this war. It's like, well, hold on. Can we, regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of who you want to win on the side of the war, or whether you even support war, like, we need to talk about religious persecution. It's a real thing that's really happening in today's modern Western culture, and we're pretending it's not happening because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah. And then here's a video of the church holding a service in a parishioner's garage as their church was seized, going back to the first Christians who said blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Yeah, there's like full-on like riots breaking out in these churches as the police try and evacuate all the parishioners out of the church.
But they're not talking about it because it is... it's an inconvenience to have this kind of conversation right now.
Well, you wouldn't put that on mainstream news in the States where the majority of people identify as Christian. That wouldn't help.
It is I think it's really important. And we live in this really amazing world where information and disinformation, unfortunately, is everywhere. And so this is why I actually personally like to listen to both sides of the extreme argument so that I can actually, I wouldn't say make an informed decision, but at least make my own decision, right? So, because who knows if it's informed or disinformed anymore, but I definitely want to make my own decisions about what I believe. And the only thing that I have come to trust is the Word of God and the Spirit of prophecy. There really isn't anything else that I can put my faith and my trust in besides God's word. And I think as followers, as people who make the claim that we are, Christians in the time that we're living, more and more we need to go back to the word of God that has been true for thousands of years. And it was those very words were spoken and brought this whole world into existence. God's word has this creative ability to both speak, and it was so, but I also believe to be read and to recreate. So when we look at Romans 12, not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, I believe that when we read God's word, especially when we read it consistently and we stack those victories, We are recreated in God's image, and it literally changes us on a, I would even believe on a cellular level as well too. So I highly recommend people to not just listen to information or disinformation, but go to God's word and see what makes sense. You know, when we look at all the wars and rumors of wars that are happening all around the world, this was all predicted in biblical prophecy.
It's true. That's I had a bunch of other really saucy articles that I'm now not going to go to, but we'll leave it that you've transitioned us, segued us perfectly into the free offer. We're going to do the offer of The Great Controversy, America in Bible Prophecy.
Wow. It's one of my favorite books. I've read it 3 times.
3 times. The word to text, if you would like to claim this free offer, this free book, is STORM, STORM. Just send that word and that word only, and then the bot will text you back and get your details, and we'll get that out to you. Text that word STORM to 0482 082 876. That is 0482 082 876. And
Can I talk about that book really quick?
Please.
So this book is basically separated into 2 parts. Part 1 is a church history, basically from the time after the Acts of the Apostles, all the way moving through the church history to modern day, modern time. And then it goes from kind of historical background evidence and information on what happened with the church from the Acts of the Apostles till modern day.
Mm-hmm.
Then it changes and it shifts to prophetically explaining what is going to happen right before Jesus returns. It is really powerful book, really incredible. I believe an inspired book as well too. And it is so in line with the biblical prophecies as well too, that this is why I've read it 3 times, because it's one of my favorite books.
Mm-hmm.
And I highly recommend, if you have not read this book, get a copy. It's free. Text us. What were they supposed to text again?
STORM.
STORM. So text STORM to what number?
0482 082 876.
Get this book. Read it. Share it with your friends. Do a little book club. Read it together. Go 1 chapter a week. You'll have yourself a great year. It's amazing.
Now, we're over time, but I'm enjoying it. And if you're enjoying it too, please send through your comments. We'll just cover last week's comments quickly. Blake, I won't hold you too long.
Okay.
One comment says, just imagine the advantage Canada would have if they joined America. Now, this is based on last week's show.
Like as a state?
Yeah, if they became the 51st state. Now, the first advantage I can think of when I was in Canada, I was shocked that they pay Australian prices for fuel, and you can literally drive over the border and fill up for American prices. Now, okay, they've got the Canadian dollar, which is not as strong as the US dollar, but still, it's a huge saving to drive over the border. And I know a lot of people there that actually do exactly that. They just drive over the border, fill up their tank of fuel, and drive back to Canada. So there's one advantage I can think of.
A disadvantage, though, would be the healthcare system, because Australia, we have it made here, and I think Canada is very similar. The privatization of healthcare in America has been problematic for a long time. If you don't have money and you have an injury, you're going to stay injured in America, and that's very sad. So I do like the fact that as an Australian, I can go to the hospital, and I'm pretty sure it's like this in Canada, and if I'm sick or if I've had an injury, they're going to treat me and they're going to take care of me, right? So it balances out. Maybe have dual citizenship and then buy your fuel in America and then go to the hospital in Canada.
It's true that their medical system needs a lot of help.
Yeah. And it's so convoluted and so complex that there's not an easy fix for that. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, we got to be just like this. It is complex, but for the amount that it costs the American people, it is not directly correlated with the ranking of the healthcare system on a global scale. So Americans are paying way more than anyone else, and they're like really far down the list on overall healthcare. Makes no sense.
Bobby Kennedy, solution's on the way. It's going to take many years to solve this problem, but praise the Lord that there's another candidate in the office, a Democrat, traditionally a Democrat, and that's okay because he's got good intentions.
Isn't Trump a Democrat too?
He was, and so was Elon. So Jeff here has more IQ than me, higher IQ than me. See, I don't even know how to rank IQ, but he
more
says
IQ-ery.
He's more IQ-ery than I am. He says it's Hegelian dialectic on steroids. Okay, well, Jeff, I went to college for 5 years and I still haven't got my head around that. I'm sorry. But maybe Blake does. Dutton should take a leaf out of Trump's book and he would romp it in. Distance from NATO, don't utter Ukraine. Apparently Albanese wants to send some troops and be like the now new science and Trump. The world apparently is healing itself. So turn your back from toxic global climate religion, which is sort of what Musk was all about, but he's doing it in a common sense way. He's not doing it in such a way that would ruin the country financially. And so what do you think of that? Australian politics, we've got an election coming up in a very short time, like in a wildly short time, there's an election. They still haven't picked a date. And
Here's what I'll say. I don't know how connected this is with all of this, but here's what I'll say in terms of Elon and Trump. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I am an Australian. But the interesting thing about them is if you want to talk economy and if you want to talk running businesses and you want to talk money, those two guys have so much experience in running businesses. Now, I'm not sure if that's the best solution or best answer, and I'm not here to promote either one. But from a monetary perspective and a business perspective, I think they know what they're doing just looking at their track record, right? I mean, both of them are highly successful in that one area. And literally, Elon just bought a company that everyone said it was a terrible idea for him to buy, but he didn't buy Twitter or now X. He didn't buy that for a monetary gain. He bought that so that he could basically have a platform to say whatever he wanted to say to the masses.
To protect free speech was his intended goal.
And that as well too. His ability, and so he created a space. And there's some really terrible things that are said on Twitter. I've seen it. It's awful. But they should have the right to say those things.
The last thing before we close, looking up a show with Danny Malenkov and Sharissa Terosian. As they explore current world events and how they relate to Bible prophecy. Now, truth be told, they beat us to it. They were the original gangsters in this space, and we've just...
Oh, geez.
I must admit, I didn't know that they were covering these certain topics as well. I will probably guarantee you that they do it in a better way than we do. So if you're looking for other shows like this, and assumedly far better than this, Looking Up is on Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5:30, and you won't find anyone more based than Danny Malenkov.
No, I both of those characters are both Terosian and Malenkov are amazing human beings, and nothing but respect for them. So happy to hear that they're looking up. And you should too.
They're looking up. All right. Thank you for joining The Perfect Storm. Blake, it's been wonderful having you here. If anybody else has enjoyed hearing Blake's voice again on this station, I know a guy who can keep putting him on episodes. So let us know in the comments. Questions, comments, feedback, Bible questions, prophecy questions. Bring them to the table. Justin and Phil will be back in the near future. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Blake.
Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.